In the vast landscape of Nigeria's political and cultural history, very few figures have stirred the national conscience and global attention like Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a man whose fiery words, unyielding convictions, and prophetic foresight carved him into the consciousness of millions. His emergence wasn't merely political, it was spiritual. His message pierced through the fog of national denial and historical injustice like a clarion call in the wilderness. He is known today as the man who saw tomorrow, not because he claimed to be supernatural, but because he accurately read the signs of the times, predicted the strategies of oppression, and exposed plans so dark and destructive that many Nigerians preferred the comfort of ignorance to the burden of truth, the prophecy and the warning. Long before the crisis of insecurity, farmer-herder clashes, banditry, and religious extremism consumed the country, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu predicted and exposed the plans of the descendants of Usman Dan Fodio, the Fulani political elite, to conduct systematic ethnic cleansing, to seize ancestral lands of the indigenous people of Nigeria, and to Islamize the entire nation as part of a long-standing strategic religious expansion. He warned that this ethnic and religious agenda wasn't random. It was calculated, ideological, and well-funded. He revealed how the Fulani oligarchy embedded itself in every arm of government: the presidency, the military, the police, the judiciary, and even in the economic structure, slowly laying the foundation for total domination of the indigenous peoples of Nigeria, particularly those in the South and the Middle Belt. According to Kanu, the goal was simple yet terrifying: to subjugate the native populations under a foreign religious and political ideology, enslave them economically, erase their heritage, and seize control of their territories by force, manipulation, or lawfare. But Nigerians took his prophecies for granted. Rather than engage with the urgent truths he revealed, they mocked him, scorned him, and called him names. They dismissed his revelations as conspiracy theories. They called him a madman, a rebel, a warmonger, and most devastatingly, a terrorist, despite the fact that he never lifted a weapon. And his group, IPOB, consistently insisted on nonviolence and peaceful agitation for self-determination, betrayed by his own. As the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu carried the hopes of millions who believed in the possibility of a free and sovereign Biafra, an independent nation for the oppressed and marginalized peoples of eastern Nigeria. His movement gained traction, especially among young people who had grown weary of a system that seemed designed to destroy them. But instead of support from his ethnic leaders, his own governors colluded with strangers, with outsiders from the very powers he warned about. Out of fear, political convenience, or outright betrayal, they designated him and his movement as terrorists, feeding the federal government the moral cover it needed to unleash brutal military force against his followers. In 2015, he was arrested for the first time, not for any act of violence or terrorism, but for simply speaking and agitating for the freedom of his people. His arrest ignited massive protests across the world, from New York to London, Johannesburg to Berlin. Eventually, he was granted bail, yet that did not stop the powers that be. In 2017, the Nigerian military, under the guise of Operation Python Dance, invaded his ancestral home in Umuahia, in Abia State. The intent was clear: to kill him. The siege led to the deaths of several unarmed civilians and the destruction of his home, which had become a spiritual rallying point for his movement. Kanu narrowly escaped death and went into exile. But the hunt for him continued, the kidnapping that shocked the world. In 2021, in a brazen violation of international law, he was unlawfully kidnapped by the Nigerian state. The operation, reportedly carried out in Kenya, involved surveillance, illegal detention, and eventually extraordinary rendition. a euphemism for international abduction. He was forcibly returned to Nigeria without due process, without the knowledge or approval of any competent international court. The Nigerian government presented his return as a victory, but in doing so, they exposed themselves to global scrutiny. The violation of his human rights and international treaties became a subject of litigation, protests, and diplomatic concern. The case that refuses to die. Since his illegal detention in 2021, the case has dragged on in Nigerian courts. But rather than seeking true justice or resolution, the state has done everything possible to delay and obstruct the process. Until now, the very individuals and institutions who brought the case against him are now running away from it. They can no longer face the light of justice. Their lies, contradictions, and abuses are unraveling in public view. The judiciary, under pressure and surveillance, has hesitated to deliver a clear ruling. International courts and human rights groups have called for his release, citing his unlawful rendition and prolonged detention without trial. Yet, the state continues to stall, hoping the world forgets. But the world is watching. Fulfillment of a terrible vision. In the time since his warnings were first mocked, every single one of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's predictions has come to pass. Nigeria has descended into chaos. Ethnic cleansing is no longer hidden. Communities in the Middle Belt and the South are under siege. Entire villages have been wiped out. Displaced persons camps now serve as permanent homes for the indigenous people who once lived freely on their lands. The Fulani militias, often shielded by state silence, continue to expand their reach. Christian communities are burnt, churches attacked, children kidnapped, and forced into religious conversions. The military and police often arrive only after the destruction is complete. And the perpetrators? Seldom caught, seldom tried. Exactly as he warned. The man who saw tomorrow. In a nation where prophets are often unrecognized in their time, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu stands out as the man who saw tomorrow. His words, once dismissed as radical, are now viewed as revelations. His voice, though silenced in a dungeon, still echoes across continents. His followers still march, still chant, still believe. He is no longer just a man. He is now a symbol of resistance, a warning to the complicit, and a voice for the oppressed. The world must reckon with his story, because in it lies a truth that cannot be erased. He saw what many could not. He said what many dared not, and he stood when many fled. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is the man who saw tomorrow, and the nation ignored him at its peril.